My parents excluded me from the party. Mom said, "Your sister deserves peace. You bring discomfort." I agreed to stay away. Then my fiancé asked why, and I told him the truth. You won't believe how my own family, the people who were supposed to love and protect me, stole 8 years of my life, my entire future, and nearly $80,000. They made me believe I was the problem, the selfish one, while they systematically drained me dry. But what they didn't know is that their house of cards was about to come crashing down, and I was going to be the one holding the hammer. That day started like any other. I was in my workshop, the kind of place that smells like sawdust and possibility, but lately, it just felt like exhaustion. Sunlight, thick with dust, was slanting through the windows, making everything glow like powdered gold. I was sanding this beautiful walnut desk, feeling the wood warm under my hands, watching the grain just open up. My shoulders were screaming. I'd been at it since 6 a.m., 15 hours straight. 15 hours of standing, shaping, breathing in all those fine particles that settled into my hair and my clothes. This used to be my dream, you know? But now? It was just another 16-hour day, another piece I'd have to sell for way less than it was worth, all because of them. All because of this phantom debt that never seemed to shrink. This phantom debt, that's what I called it in my head. It was this endless, shapeless obligation that had somehow become my inheritance. 6 long years. 6 years of making payments for my father's business losses. 6 years since I saw him clutching his chest in our kitchen, heard him say the doctors found irregularities, that stress would kill him, and the company accounts were bleeding red. I was only 21 back then, still naive enough to believe family meant mutual support, a reciprocal relationship. Boy, was I wrong. I was so wrong. I set down the sandpaper, flexing my fingers. My hands looked ancient, the skin cracked despite all the lotion I rubbed in nightly. I grabbed my water bottle, took a long pull, and my gaze landed on the white oak table in the center of the studio. That piece, that one still hurt to look at. I'd built it 3 months ago, during a week where sleep felt impossible, where my bank account numbers kept rearranging themselves into eviction. Building it had been therapy, every single joint cut with the kind of precision that demands total mental silence. I'd carved my heat brand V. Dawson into the side apron, my hands shaking, and then rubbed 20 coats of oil into it until it literally glowed like amber. It was the best work I'd ever done. And it was still sitting here unsold because I just couldn't bring myself to let it go. Then my phone buzzed. Mom. I seriously considered ignoring it. I was so bone-tired, the thought of letting it ring felt like an act of pure rebellion. But habit, that deep, old groove, pulled me in, and I swiped to answer before I could stop myself. Hi, Mom, I said. Verity, her voice had that airless quality, the one that always signaled bad news wrapped up in fake concern. I'm glad I caught you. I wanted to talk before things get hectic this weekend. Okay, I braced myself, leaning against the workbench. It's about the engagement party on Saturday. Your father and I have been discussing it, and we think it would be best if you didn't attend. The words landed like a physical blow. I gripped the workbench, my knuckles white. You're uninviting me? Don't make it sound so dramatic, she chirped. It's just, Bella's been under so much stress with the wedding planning, and you know how she gets when she's anxious. We just thought it would be easier for everyone if you sat this one out. Easier for everyone. That phrase was a classic, one of my mother's favorites. It never, ever meant everyone. It always meant Bella. I already bought a gift, I said, hating how small my voice sounded. That's sweet, honey, but it's really not necessary. You know we understand your situation. The business has been struggling, and we don't expect you to. The business is fine. The lie, automatic, defensive, spilled out. Verity, her tone shifted, becoming syrupy sweet, the kind of voice that made me feel like I was 13 again. Your father's heart condition means he can't take on stress. You know that. If there's tension at the party, if you and Bella get into one of your, discussions, it could be dangerous for him. There it was. The heart condition. The ultimate trump card. Played every single time I showed even a flicker of resistance. I closed my eyes. I saw my father, 6 years ago, pale and trembling at the kitchen table while Mom called 911. I saw the hospital bills that supposedly followed, the specialist appointments, the medications. Except, I had never actually seen any of those bills. Never been to an appointment with him. My parents handled everything privately, then simply presented me with the final tally. $60,000 in medical debt, combined with the company's sudden financial collapse. And me, dutiful and terrified of losing the only family I had said yes to all of it. I've been making payments for 6 years, I said quietly. I've never missed one. And we're grateful, sweetheart. But this weekend isn't about money. It's about Bella's happiness. You understand that, don't you? Oh, I understood a lot of things. I understood that my sister got the childhood bedroom with the bay window while I got the converted garage. I understood that Bella's college tuition was paid in full while I was told there simply wasn't enough for both of us. I understood that when I was 23, working 16-hour days to build my portfolio, to create the kind of furniture that might earn me a reputation, I was called selfish for prioritizing my hobby over family obligations. I understand, I said. Wonderful. I knew you would. We'll see you soon, okay? Maybe Sunday for brunch. The call ended. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to dead air. Then I walked to my desk, pulled open the bottom drawer, and took out the envelope I'd sealed 2 days ago. Inside was a check for $5,000, half of what I'd been paid for a commissioned dining set, money I desperately needed for next month's rent. The card attached read, "Congratulations, Bella and Julian. Wishing you every happiness." I stared at it for a long moment, then I tore the check in half, then quarters, then I just kept tearing until the pieces were too small to rip anymore. The scraps fluttered onto my workbench like snow. I swept them into the trash bin with the side of my hand and went back to sanding. The walnut desk still needed work, and work, it seemed, was all I had left. Friday morning, the day before the engagement party, arrived with a fog so thick I could barely see across the workshop parking lot. I'd been up since 5, running inventory, trying desperately not to think about the calendar. 30 days. 30 days until eviction if I didn't make next month's rent. 30 days to pull together $3,000, which might as well have been $3 million. I was reorganizing my chisel rack when I heard car doors slam outside. Multiple doors. My stomach plummeted. I walked to the front window, peering out through the condensation. A sleek Audi sedan sat in my gravel lot, looking as out of place as a show horse in a scrapyard. 4 people were climbing out, my mother in cream linen, my father in a sport coat, Bella in something white and flowing, and a tall man in dark jeans and a charcoal Henley. Julian, the fiancé I'd never met. My first thought was to lock the door and pretend I wasn't here. My second thought was they'd already seen my truck. I watched them approach, watched my mother's practiced smile, my father's careful gait, Bella's hand possessively wrapped around Julian's arm. I opened the door before they could even knock. Surprise! My mother's voice was crystalline, completely performative. "We wanted Julian to see where you work. He's very interested in craftsmanship." Julian stepped forward, extending his hand. "Verity, I've heard a lot about you." I doubted that. But his handshake was firm, his eye contact direct. He was handsome in an understated way, sharp jawline, dark hair, gray eyes. There was an easiness to him that screamed money, the kind of wealth that doesn't need to announce itself. "Nice to meet you," I said, stepping back to let them into the studio. Julian's attention immediately went to the space. His gaze swept over the workbenches, the hanging tools, the half-finished pieces. I watched him take in the Japanese pull saw on the wall, the antique hand planes, the white oak table in the center of the room. "This is incredible," he said, and something in his voice made me think he actually meant it. "Where did you train?" "Here." The word came out flat. "I'm self-taught." "Really?" Julian moved toward the oak table, his expression shifting into something like wonder. He crouched down, examining the joinery, running his fingers along the edge where the apron met the legs. "These are hand-cut dovetails. Most people use a jig for dovetails this size. The precision required to do this by hand." He stood, looking at me with new attention. "How long have you been woodworking?" "Since I was 15. My mother cut in, her voice bright and brittle. Verity's always been good with her hands, very practical skills. The dismissal in that word, practical, made my jaw clench. Bella was shifting her weight, looking profoundly uncomfortable. My father stood near the door, arms crossed, watching us like a man watching a fuse burn toward dynamite. "We should let her get back to work," my father said. "I'm sure she's busy." But Julian was still looking around, his interest genuine. "Do you mind if I look at the milling bay? I've been wanting to set up a shop myself, and I'd love to see your equipment." "Julian, honey, we really should," Bella started. "It's fine," I said, surprising even myself. Something about my father's eagerness to leave made me want to prolong this. "It's through that door." I led him toward the milling bay, aware of my family trailing behind like reluctant shadows. The moment I opened the door, the smell of raw lumber rolled out, cedar, pine, oak, all mixing into this thick perfume of possibility. Julian stepped in, and I watched his expression shift into something close to reverence. The space was organized chaos, a table saw with an extended out feed, a planer, a jointer, racks of lumber sorted by species and grade. The dust collector sat in the corner like a sleeping beast. "Can I see how you've set up your dust collection?" Julian asked. I moved to the machine, flipped the switch. The collector roared to life, a grinding mechanical howl that swallowed all other sound. Julian leaned in to examine the hose connections, nodding. Behind me, I felt my family's presence like a storm front. I turned and found Bella stepping close, too close, her face arranged into an expression of desperate sweetness. Her mouth was moving. The words were lost under the machine noise, but I could read lips well enough. "We need to talk." I led Bella back into the finishing studio, leaving Julian to examine the lumber racks. The dust collector's roar followed us, muffling the world into a low, mechanical thunder. My parents followed us in. My mother immediately moved to the window, putting space between herself and whatever was about to happen. My father positioned himself near the door, blocking the exit. Military positioning, I thought distantly. They'd practiced this. Bella grabbed my wrist. Her perfectly manicured fingernails, pale pink, dug into my skin. "I need a favor," Bella half-shouted over the noise. "For the engagement party tomorrow night." "Tomorrow Saturday," I said stupidly. "Yes, tomorrow. Saturday night." Bella's grip tightened. "I need a cedar archway. 7 feet tall, distressed finish, something rustic elegant. The rental company canceled on us yesterday, and I'm desperate." I stared at her. "An archway. By tomorrow morning." "Bella, that's 30 hours of work minimum. Maybe more if you want it to look decent." "Then you'd better start now." Her voice had gone sharp, the sweetness completely evaporated. "Unless you want everyone at my engagement party to know why you couldn't make it." The threat landed like a slap. I yanked my wrist free. "What's that supposed to mean?" My father stepped forward. "It means we've supported you for 6 years while you've played carpenter. The least you can do is help your sister on the most important weekend of her life." Played carpenter. That hit me like a gut punch. I looked at my father, at his flushed face, his clenched fists, his complete lack of the frailty he'd claimed for years. "Supported me?" The laugh that came out was serrated, raw. "I've been paying your debt since I was 21. I've given you everything. You've given us what you owe us." My father snapped, stepping closer. His face was red now, veins standing out on his neck. "After everything we sacrificed to raise you, to feed you, to keep a roof over your head, you think you can just..." Your heart seemed strong enough to scream at me. The words came out louder than I'd intended, and in that exact moment, the dust collector in the milling bay cycled down. The machine's roar died into silence, and my shout echoed through both rooms like a gunshot. Footsteps. Julian appeared in the doorway between zones, a Japanese chisel in his hand. He was holding it the way someone holds a chisel when they truly understand tools, fingers wrapped around the handle, thumb resting on the brass ferrule. His eyes moved from me to my parents, to Bella, and back again. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. The silence stretched. My mother was the first to recover, arranging her face into a strained smile. "Just family discussion. You know how it is." Julian's gaze landed on the chisel in his hand, then moved to the wall where its matching set hung. This is a Tassai Kurochi, professional-grade Japanese steel. Most hobbyists don't invest in tools like this. I'm not a hobbyist, I said. No, Julian set the chisel down on the workbench with deliberate care. I don't think you are. He turned to Bella. Your sister trained at RISD, didn't she? The question landed like a depth charge. I felt the air compress. No, Bella said quickly. She didn't go to college. She's always worked here. I was invited to RISD, I interrupted. The words came up from somewhere deep, somewhere I'd buried 8 years ago. 8 years ago. Full scholarship to their furniture design program. Julian's expression shifted, not confusion, but recognition. Something clicking into place. Dawson, he said slowly. Wait. Dawson. I watched him put it together, watched the moment of realization hit. Professor Evans told me about a student, Julian continued, his voice taking on a strange quality. A student named Dawson who rejected a full-ride scholarship to RISD's furniture program. He said it was one of the biggest regrets of his career, letting that talent slip away. He kept their portfolio for years. The room had gone completely still. I felt my mother's panic like electricity in the air. That was 8 years ago, Julian said, looking at me. You would have been 23, I finished. My mother moved forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. Julian, it's complicated. Verity had severe anxiety back then. She begged us to help her decline the acceptance. We even wrote the letter for her because she was too overwhelmed to do it herself. That's not true, I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, like I was listening to someone else speak. I never received an acceptance package. Honey, you're misremembering. I never got the letter, Mom. I checked the mail every single day that spring. I never saw anything from RISD. Julian's face had gone hard. He looked at my parents with the kind of expression that probably worked well in boardrooms. If she didn't write or sign that rejection letter, and you forged her signature on official correspondence with a federal institution. He let the sentence hang. That's mail fraud. And forgery. Federal crimes. My father's face had gone from red to white. Now wait just a minute. Did she sign the letter? Julian asked. Simple question. The silence was answer enough. My hands had started shaking. I pressed them flat against the workbench, feeling the wood grain under my palms, grounding myself in something solid. 8 years. 8 years of believing I hadn't been good enough, that RISD had looked at my portfolio and found it wanting. 8 years of the phantom debt. We did what we thought was best, my mother said, but the conviction had drained from her voice. Verity was so young and the program was so far away, we couldn't afford to lose her. Couldn't afford, I repeated. The words tasted like rust. You couldn't afford to lose my income. My father stepped forward, attempting to regain control. That's not fair. You have no idea what we were going through financially. The heart condition, I said flatly. The one that required $60,000 in treatment. When exactly was that diagnosed, Dad? I watched him hesitate, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. 6 years ago, my mother supplied. You know that. We've been over this. What hospital? I asked. What cardiologist? Another hesitation. Too long. Julian was watching this unfold with the attention of someone who'd grown up learning to read boardroom dynamics. You know, he said conversationally. It's interesting. When someone actually has a serious heart condition, they usually mention their doctor's name, the medications, the dietary restrictions. He looked at my father. What medication are you on? My father's jaw worked. That's private medical information. It's also very easy to verify. Julian pulled out his phone. My father's a cardiac surgeon at Mass General. I could have him pull records with your consent. Or without it if there's reasonable suspicion of fraud. The word fraud seemed to suck the oxygen out of the room. I was remembering things now. Pieces clicking together with the awful precision of a tightening mortise joint. My father's heart condition had appeared 2 years after the RISD letter would have arrived. 2 years of me working 16-hour days, building my portfolio, selling pieces at craft fairs, saving every dollar. And then suddenly, there was a crisis. Suddenly, I was needed. The business losses, I said slowly. The ones I've been paying off for 6 years. What really happened to the company? My mother's face arranged itself into a mask of wounded dignity. Your father made some bad investments. It wasn't his fault the market crashed. The market crashed in 2008, Julian said mildly. That was 17 years ago. What investments are we talking about? Bella finally spoke, her voice thin. Can we please just stop this? Julian, we should go. What kind of investments, Dad? I pressed. I thought of the ledger in my desk drawer, the one I'd started keeping 3 years ago when the numbers had stopped making sense. Because I've been paying business debts for 6 years, and I've never once seen paperwork, no loan documents, no creditor information. My father's face had gone red again. You think you're so smart, don't you? Think you're going to audit me? I'm your father. Then act like it. The shout came from somewhere primal, a deep well of pain and anger. Tell me the truth. For once in my life, tell me the actual truth. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear my own heartbeat, the tick of the wall clock, traffic on the distant highway. My mother broke first. It was gambling, she said quietly. Your father had some debts, not 60,000, it was less. But we needed help. And you were making money, and we thought. You thought you'd steal 8 years of my life. My voice had gone flat. You forged a rejection letter from my dream school. You invented a medical emergency. You've taken almost $80,000 from me over 6 years for business losses that were actually gambling debts. I looked at my father. How much did you actually owe? That's not. How much? 20,000, he muttered, but with interest. I've paid you almost 4 times that. I felt something crystallizing inside my chest, something cold and clear and absolutely certain. I've been your personal ATM since I was 21 years old. You stole my education. You stole my 20s. You stole my future. Julian was looking at my parents with an expression of pure disgust. This is beyond family dysfunction. This is criminal fraud, tax fraud, if you claimed those gambling debts as business losses. He turned to Bella. Did you know about any of this? Bella's silence was answer enough. Her face had gone pale, but there was something in her eyes, not surprise. Knowledge. Complicity. You knew, I said softly. About RISD. You knew I'd been accepted. I didn't. It wasn't my place to. Bella's words tumbled over each other. You were always so intense about your woodworking, and Mom said you'd be better off staying close to home, and I thought. You thought you'd use my work to make yourself look good. I moved toward the white oak table like you did 3 months ago. Julian's brow furrowed. What? I gestured to the table. This piece. I built it in March. Posted a photo on my barely used Instagram account because a client asked to see my work. I looked at Bella. And then what happened? Bella had gone very still. Then my sister, I continued, my voice cold, precise. Took that photo, cropped out the background, and posted it on her Instagram. Claimed she'd built it herself, got 4,000 likes and a dozen commission requests. That's not. I never said I built it. Bella stammered. You said my new piece and so proud of this build. My voice was surgical. I have screenshots. Julian's phone was already out. What's your Instagram handle? Don't. Bella said sharply. Julian, please don't. But he was already scrolling. I watched him find the post. Watched his thumb stop moving. Watched him zoom in on the photo. Then he walked to the oak table and crouched down, examining the side apron. His finger traced over the heat brand burned into the wood. The V, Dawson. It's the same table, he said quietly. Same grain pattern. Same brand mark visible in the photo if you zoom in. He looked up at Bella. You claimed credit for your sister's work. That's intellectual property theft. It was just a photo. Bella tried. It was copyright infringement and fraud. Julian stood. You gained social capital and potentially income opportunities by lying about creating this piece. That's actionable. Bella's face had gone from pale to splotchy red. You're being ridiculous. It was just Instagram. Just Instagram? I repeated. I felt something shifting in my chest. 8 years of compression finally finding a release valve. You stole my work, my reputation, and my potential clients. How many commission requests did you get from that post? I didn't accept any of them. How many, Bella? 15. Bella whispered. 15 potential clients. 15 opportunities that could have changed everything. Could have paid rent. Could have bought supplies. Could have built the financial security I'd been drowning without for years. Julian was still examining the table, his jaw tight. This is museum-quality work. The joinery alone. He stopped. Straightened. You know what? I'm done. He turned to Bella. I need to think about some things. Panic flashed across Bella's face. Julian, no, please. It's family drama. It doesn't have anything to do with us. You lied about building this table. What else have you lied about? Nothing, I swear. But Bella's mother was moving now, her composure cracking. This is your fault, she hissed at me. You couldn't just let things be. You had to ruin everything. I ruined everything? I felt the words come up from somewhere volcanic. You forged documents. You stole $80,000. You destroyed my future. And you want to blame me? My father stepped forward, and for a moment I thought he might actually hit me. His hand was raised, face contorted, and I found myself stepping back instinctively. Julian moved between us so fast it seemed like teleportation. Touch her and I'll have you arrested. This is my property. Actually, I said, my voice suddenly calm, chillingly calm. It's not. I walked to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the leather-bound ledger I'd been keeping for 3 years. The one I'd started when the numbers had stopped making sense, when I'd begun documenting everything. 3 years ago, I said, opening the ledger, I started tracking every payment I made to you. Every business debt installment. Every emergency check. I turned pages, revealing neat columns of dates, amounts, and purposes. I also started keeping copies of every receipt, every bank statement, every text message where you demanded money. My mother had gone very still. What are you doing? I'm showing you what due diligence looks like. I found the page I wanted. Last year, I hired a forensic accountant. Cost me $2,000 I couldn't afford, but I needed to know if I was crazy. Turns out I wasn't. I turned the ledger toward Julian. My father claimed business losses on his taxes for 6 consecutive years, losses that I was helping him recover from. But he never actually had a business failure. He reported the gambling debts as business losses, which is tax fraud. And the money I gave him? He never reported that as income. More tax fraud. Julian took the ledger, his expression hardening as he scanned the pages. These are federal crimes, multiple counts. I know. I pulled out another document, this one in a plastic sleeve. I also had a real estate attorney look into something that's been bothering me. The workshop, this building, was purchased by my grandfather 30 years ago. When he died 15 years ago, he left it to me in his will. I was 16. My parents had gone completely silent. But I never saw that will, I continued. My parents told me Grandpa had left everything to them, and I believed it. Why wouldn't I? I was a kid. I held up the document. This is the title deed. My name has been on it for 15 years. And the property taxes I've been paying on this building? The ones you told me were for business expenses? Those were my property taxes. On my building. My mother's hands were shaking. You can't. I can. I felt the years of exhaustion crystallizing into something diamond hard. I own this building. I own the business. And the house you're living in? The one with the mortgage I've been paying half of for 6 years? I called the bank. You're 3 months behind on payments. You're in default. You had no right. My father started. I had every right. I've been paying your mortgage. I closed the ledger. So here's what's going to happen. The house goes on the market tomorrow. You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. The workshop stays with me. And every dollar you've taken from me over the past 6 years gets reported to the IRS as unreported income. Good luck explaining that. My father lunged. Not at me. At the table. Or more specifically, at the can of paint thinner sitting on the edge of the workbench, left there from yesterday's finishing work. But Bella was faster. She grabbed the can, her face twisted with desperation, and swung it toward the white oak table, toward the side apron where the V. Dawson brand marked my work. If I can't have it, Bella started. I moved without thinking. I threw myself between my sister and the table, arms out, and felt the chemicals splash across my chest. The paint thinner soaked through my flannel shirt instantly, the harsh solvent smell overwhelming, and then the burning started. Shit. I ripped the flannel off, buttons scattering across the floor, and hurled the soaked shirt into the metal waste bin. I stood there in my undershirt, breathing hard, feeling the chemical evaporating off my skin. The burn was superficial. I'd caught it fast enough, but my hands were shaking with adrenaline. Julian had grabbed Bella's wrist, forcing her to drop the paint thinner can. It hit the concrete floor with a clang, chemical pooling. "That's assault," he said quietly, an attempted destruction of evidence. He was holding Bella, but stepped back, looking at her like he'd never seen her before. Then he twisted the engagement ring off her finger, a simple platinum band, and set it on the workbench next to the ledger. She tried to resist, but he was stronger. "Keep it," he told me. "Collateral for the damages. Have your lawyers send me the full accounting." Then he walked toward the bay door and out into the morning fog. For a moment, nobody moved. I stood in my undershirt, breathing hard, smelling of paint thinner. Bella stared at the door where Julian had disappeared. My parents looked at each other, and I saw the first real fear cross their faces. "Get out," I said. "Get out of my workshop and don't come back." My mother opened her mouth, closed it. Then she grabbed her purse and walked out. My father followed, silent for once. Bella lingered for a moment, something complicated crossing her face, regret, maybe, or just the bitter realization that she'd lost something she couldn't get back. Then she turned and left too. I stood alone in the finishing studio, surrounded by sawdust and half-built dreams and the white oak table that had somehow become evidence in the trial of my own life. I looked at the ring on the workbench. Platinum. Simple. Probably worth 3 months of rent. Then I picked it up and tucked it into the ledger's back pocket, where it would be safe until I figured out what to do next. I spent the rest of Friday cleaning. Not productive work, just mindless wiping and scrubbing. I mopped up the paint thinner, threw out my ruined shirt, the smell still clinging to me. I reorganized tools that didn't even need reorganizing. It was muscle memory work, giving my brain a chance to finally process the absolute bomb that had just gone off in my life. Around 4, I heard a car door outside. My first thought was sheer panic, them, back again, for round 2. But when I looked, it was Julian, leaning against his Audi. He'd stayed. Or he'd come back. Either way, he was waiting for me. I walked out into the afternoon light. The fog had burned off, leaving one of those crisp, crystalline autumn days that made everything look sharp-edged and possible. "I wanted to make sure they actually left," Julian said when I approached. "I've been parked at the coffee shop down the road, saw them drive away about an hour ago." I nodded, not quite trusting my voice. "I also wanted to apologize," he continued. "I had no idea about any of that. If I had known what Bella, what your family..." He stopped, shook his head. "That's not quite true. I should have known. There were signs, but I chose not to see them." "That's normal," I said quietly. "It's easier not to see." Julian looked at the workshop, at the weathered sign above the door that read, Dawson Woodworks. The table in there, the white oak one, that's genuinely extraordinary work. Professor Evans would lose his mind if he saw it. "Thanks. I meant what I said about the ring. Keep it as collateral or sell it, whatever you need. And I'll have my lawyer reach out about the Instagram situation. Bella needs to issue a public correction at minimum, and you're entitled to pursue damages if you want." I thought about that. About lawsuits and lawyers and dragging this into court. It felt exhausting. I just want her to leave me alone. "That's fair." Julian pulled a business card from his wallet. "This is me. If you ever want to talk, or if you need a reference, or if you ever want to show your portfolio to Professor Evans, he's still teaching. He'd remember your work." I took the card. Heavy stock, minimalist design, Julian Chin, architectural consultant. "I don't have a portfolio anymore," I said. "I sold most of my early pieces to pay bills. Then build a new one." Julian smiled, and it was the first genuine expression I'd seen from him all day. "You're 31. RISD's furniture program accepts graduate students. You could apply again." The idea felt too large to hold. I folded it away somewhere safe, somewhere I could examine it later when I wasn't running on adrenaline and paint thinner fumes. Thank you, I said, for everything today. You didn't have to. Yeah, I did. He opened his car door, then paused. For what it's worth, you're better off without them. All of them. Including me, probably. You weren't so bad, I said, and I meant it. He drove away, and I stood in the parking lot until the sound of his engine faded. Then I went back inside, back to the finishing studio, back to the white oak table that had somehow become the turning point of my entire life. I ran my hand across its surface, feeling the smoothness of 20 coats of oil, feeling the perfection of joints that would last 100 years. This table was proof. Proof that I was good enough, skilled enough, dedicated enough. Proof that I'd always been enough. I opened the ledger one more time, looked at the platinum ring, nestled in its back pocket. Then I closed it and put it in my desk drawer, where it would stay until I needed it. Tomorrow I would call the realtor about my parents' house. Tomorrow I would contact the IRS. Tomorrow I would start the long, complicated process of untangling myself from 8 years of lies. But today, right now, I was going to build something. I pulled on a fresh shirt, tied my hair back, and walked into the milling bay. There was a stack of cedar in the corner, beautiful clear grain boards I'd been saving for a special project. I pulled out 6 of them and carried them back to the finishing studio. An archway. Bella had asked for an archway. I wasn't going to make it, not for Bella, not for the engagement party that would probably be canceled now anyway. But I was going to make one for myself. Something beautiful and strong and precisely constructed. Something that marked a threshold between the life I'd been trapped in and the life I was finally going to build. I measured twice, marked my cuts, and fired up the table saw. The blade sang through cedar like a promise. 1 year later. The house sold in 45 days. I never went inside again, just signed the papers and watched my parents pack up in stony silence. They moved to a smaller place across town, and I heard through distant relatives that my father had gotten a job at a hardware store. My mother didn't speak to me anymore. Bella's engagement had ended, unsurprisingly, and she'd moved to Portland. I didn't miss any of them. I'd used the money from the ring, $12,000 at the jeweler's, to buy 6 months. A financial breathing room. Then I'd taken Julian's advice and emailed Professor Evans at RISD. He'd remembered my name immediately, had asked to see my current work. I'd sent photos of the white oak table. He'd called me 20 minutes later. Now I pulled my truck into the workshop parking lot and saw Julian's Audi already there. We'd stayed in touch over the past year, tentative at first, then more regularly. He'd become a friend, then a collaborator. He had architectural clients who needed custom furniture. I had the skills to make it. It was a good partnership, clean, equitable, built on mutual respect rather than forced family obligation. Julian was waiting by the bay door, holding 2 cups of coffee. Morning. I brought the plans for the Beacon Hill project. Let me see. I took the coffee and the rolled blueprints, spreading them on my workbench. A built-in bookshelf system, 8 feet tall, white oak and walnut. Complex joinery. Exactly my kind of challenge. Timeline's flexible, Julian said. Client wants quality over speed. That's my favorite kind of client. We spent an hour going over specifications, discussing wood selection, debating finish options. It was the kind of conversation I used to dream about having, technical, creative, between equals. When Julian left, I stood in the finishing studio for a moment, just breathing. The space smelled like sawdust and linseed oil. The white oak table still sat in the center of the room, no longer for sale. It was a marker now, a reminder. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I recognized immediately, Professor Evans. Hi Verity, how are you? I'm teaching a weekend intensive on advanced joinery techniques next month at RISD. Would you consider being a guest instructor? We could discuss graduate program options while you're here. I read it twice, then typed back, I'd be honored. Before leaving for the day, I drove past the old house, my parents' former house. New owners had already painted it a different color, planted new shrubs, put up a basketball hoop in the driveway. It looked like a house where people were happy. I felt nothing looking at it. No grief, no anger, no nostalgia, just the mild interest of someone observing a place they used to know. I turned the truck around and drove back toward the workshop, toward the life I was building, board by board, joint by joint, piece by piece. I had a massive bookshelf system to design, a graduate class to prepare for, a whole new future to construct. And for the first time in 8 years, I had something I thought was gone forever. I had my time back. My skills. My name. I finally, truly had myself.